it down until...
What's going on, everyone? It's LFC Transfer Room here. We are on the debate room with myself and Jack. I'm going to be doing rolling substitutes today. So we're going to have Jack on, then we're going to have Drew on, and then we're going to have Louis on. And it's going to be pretty much, I'm going to take everybody on the Salah debate as to whether or not we should extend Salah's contract, whether we should break our wage structure, whether we should do things that we've never done before as a football club, whether we should have Van Dijk, Alisson knocking on the door asking for extraordinary pay rises just to keep Salah on our payroll. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. You know, it's a fascinating debate. Genuinely, like it does cause quite a bit of controversy because there's just so much to it. But it is a very there's a lot of layers to it, which is what you love to see. I almost look at not Manchester United fan pages or content creators with jealousy, because I'm not jealous, because I mean I would much rather watch Liverpool play football than Manchester United, but they have just drama upon drama, nuanced debate. Versus Liverpool, it's like we're good, we're just kind of chilling, winning matches. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it, and then hopefully not be one of the first of your many victims today, as you just have it all with logic.
Well, I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the controversial opinion, which is if we don't extend Salah's contract and we run him out until he's 31, the value of his contract from the next club onwards is not going to exceed what we would pay him. So he may as well just sign what we're offering.
I see that. I don't like the age argument personally, because I would use Ronaldo as an example if he hadn't fallen off a cliff in the last several months. Clearly, age is a factor, even if you're a physical specimen like Cristiano Ronaldo. I just look at Salah and a guy who, you know, he's incredibly athletic, he takes care of his body at an unbelievable rate. I mean, he was out with injury, and then he was on the bench in training a day later. He's an unbelievable specimen. I think that doesn't just mean that he's getting a lot of wear and tear now. I think that means that he's got longevity to him. And so I think the biggest thing that at least my sticking point is with the Alissons, the Van Dijks knocking on the door is what's to stop them from going elsewhere to get that money? You know, why will those players eventually have to leave our club to get the top tier dollar? I think you got to provide that. If you want to be the stopping point, the final destination, you got to offer final destination money, top of the pile.
So are you prepared to risk Liverpool to have a Leeds United style implosion just to pay what people owned by countries, not owners, entire countries, can offer, which will potentially ruin our club?
Of course, I don't want bankruptcy and the situation that when FSG took over, the club was in financial disarray. I don't want that in the slightest. I think the biggest issue with the debate is that no one knows what Salah wants. No one knows what Liverpool is offering. Like, no one knows where the goalposts are. We're kind of just guessing, and I would have to imagine they are pretty sizably far apart, because there's been some jabbing in the media from both sides trying to drag public opinion one way or the other. I think if it's I would say £350,000 a week is, I think, my ceiling for Salah. And I think if you're Salah, that is in a spot where it is competitive. I don't think it's the most in the Prem, but you leave Liverpool, you're sacrificing sporting ambitions for financial ones. If that's your call, it's your call. I think you put the line in the sand at a pretty high figure, but you'd have to do the math to figure out what you can afford, because there was the new financial fair play ruling that only 70% of income can be spent. So I have no idea what that means for Liverpool, because it's transfers and wages. We'd have to do some digging into what that actually means, because if you drag it too far, obviously then you're breaking financial fair play, and then you're at risk of that. I just don't know what the numbers are. That's my biggest issue with the debate.
Well, I think we don't know what Salah would accept, and there's rumours that PSG are prepared to offer up to, you know, their 600 grand,
which is
anything to replace him.
I mean, at that point,
it's ridiculous.
Good for him. Good for him if he makes that kind of money, but do it elsewhere.
Kevin De Bruyne is on a reported 450 grand a week. We're reportedly prepared to go up to 350 grand a week. Liverpool are renowned for not paying massive in base wages, but doing quite a lot in terms of bonuses and accelerated pay and things like that. So there will be an element where Salah would have to back himself to be that long-term freak of nature, Ronaldo, Messi-esque, to earn what he could earn. So I guess it comes down to how much. What 100 grand doesn't, you're talking 350 to 400 grand. It's 450 grand. It doesn't feel like it's a big gap, but it's about 23%, isn't it? It's not an insignificant amount of money for Salah.
Yeah, it's more money in a week than we would see. I would see in several years. I'm a young guy, so I would £100,000. That would be quite a hefty amount of money.
Yeah. I mean, it's more than I've earned in my professional career, and I've been working for over 20 years. So that's the gap we're talking about here.
It's so funny with the sport that you can just toss around numbers like that. Like, I think we settle at 350 rather than 450, as if that's not millions upon millions of pounds and just huge ramifications. Because I do agree with you that naturally they would fill in. When you raise the ceiling, the gap would be filled. You wouldn't just have a 150,000 pound gap between Salah and the rest of your players, because fundamentally Salah is not, because if you have Van Dijk at what, 250,000 pounds a week, is that what he's at? Something like that.
Something like that, isn't it?
If you have Salah then at 400,000 a week, he's just fundamentally not a player that is 1.5 times better than Van Dijk. He's just not. And so Van Dijk would just come and say, pay me. Maybe there was a bit of loyalty that exists in football, but I don't know. I don't have too much faith, because I can't sit there and claim that if I was the best of the best in my profession and I was able to make the best of the best money. I love Liverpool, but I also like money quite a lot. That plays an impact in things.
But the question, and I think it's one of those, everyone will say, well, how much money is too much money? And to play devil's advocate to my own point, when you're earning that amount of money, there are things that you still can't buy. There are still things that you still can't have. There are things Elon Musk can't have that he wants. There is stuff Jeff Bezos wants that he can't have. So there will be something that Salah wants. And thankfully, he's probably thinking more about Egypt and things connected to his hometown than anything like that. But it's still money. Mane built a hospital. There are things Salah wants to do. Bojack's saying the debate's been done to death. Well, we're doing it 3 times over today, Bojack. So
we're going to murder the debate. We're going to debate will die.
But how about?
Can I read this point out real quick from Bojack? Yeah. I don't agree with this, because what's being offered? What if it's like 250,000 pounds a week? Because it's very easy for us to say that we would take 100,000 pounds a week. We're saying, why can't Salah just take that? Because he could just make more elsewhere. And 400,000 pounds a week, is he wrong for wanting this? I don't think he is. Is he the best player in the world? I think he is. This wouldn't even pay him the best in the world. So in a sense, his demands are incredibly reasonable at 400,000 pounds a week. Because if he wants Ronaldo money, I mean, he's better than Ronaldo. He's not a commercial giant like Ronaldo is. He's close, but he's not as big. I just don't. I don't see why you can say 400,000 pounds a week and say that that's unreasonable, considering the talented player he is.
Well, there's something that Liverpool could do, I think, which is if they gave Salah our Manscaped discount using the code TR2020, he could save 20% off his Manscaped products. Now, that could be a level of saving that would make him drop from 400 grand a week to 250, 300. Could it not, Jack?
I think depends on how many
product placement right there.
Depends on how many Manscaped products he purchases. That could definitely be a better financial decision. I'll do the math on that. Figure out how much of Manscaped you'd have to buy for that to be a better financial decision for him.
Yeah, the code Salah, 400k.
No, I think, look, this is just football now. And Drew's in the waiting room, so I'll get my last point and then kind of begin the carousel of new voices and perspectives. This is just football. This is the standard, the market, the going rate for top tier players. I think I agree with you in principle, but and if that's how you view the club, that's how you view the club. I agree, but I would also love to see the club employ the top players in the world and compete for the top trophies. We're in a race for the quadruple right now because we have a perfect blend of developing players and not having to almost pay them what they're worth, all of them at least. And so, there is, it comes down to how much is too much. For me, 350 to 400,000. I think again, it's not my money. If the club can do it, the club should do it. But if they put themselves in a bad position, as James had mentioned earlier, they shouldn't do it. It's again probably the most fence-sitting take that possibly ever existed. But I just think that's just the way, it's changed,
Okay.
And and the very last thing I'll make, James, is I think I'm almost proof that this is changed. This of course exists, community history. I'm an American talking about an Egyptian player playing for an English club. I'm the international fan that brings in the not better money necessarily, but more money because it's an entire nation or entire world, excuse me. So I love this debate that Bojack and I are having. I'm very sad to leave him. I'm not proof of anything. I'm very sad to leave you, Bojack, because I would love to go at you all night, but I'll let Drew take my place as the resident American in the chat.
Thank you very much, Jack. Let's trade.
Hey, real quick promo. Just got done with an interview with Michael Statham. He's a Dutch football writer. Gonna talk about Cody Gakpo. I don't know that's how you pronounce his name. It's not Gakpo, by the way. It's like Gakpo. Bit of back to the throat action on that video, and he'll be coming out very soon on the channel. But take care, James. Drew, I can't say hi to you yet, but Drew, enjoy your day. So.
He's waving in the wings.
Yeah, he's there. All right, Drew, good to see you. All right,
see you, Jack.
See ya.
So, Drew, victim number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Salah refuses to sign the contract. Do we make him play out for a year? Potentially winning some more trophies, paying him for 220 grand a week, and then find his replacement in a year's time? Or do you try and make a bit of coin off him in the final year of his contract, selling him to whoever wants to buy him at that point? What would you do?
I'd want to get the money off him while we could, unless they're sure they could get him to sign the contract in the coming year. Like if we need that extra time to negotiate and Liverpool are convinced that they can get him to sign using that extra time, then sure. But if it's at like a standstill and no one's budging, then we need to get the money from him. I'd also say I'd want Klopp to have that money to work with to bring someone else in. Like I wouldn't want Klopp's contract to run out and then potentially whoever's coming in to, replace him to have the struggle of, taking over for Klopp and, building a post-Salah Liverpool. So I'd like to see, Klopp at least get his nod for who would step in and get a year or two to work with him.
Do you think now, because this has been going on for so long and we've got Rami's agent, putting out tweets to just gaslight Liverpool fans, is it starting to come to the point now where us as fans are just thinking, do you know what? Be done with you. If you don't want to be here, if you don't want to sign it, Liverpool say that they've done the best they can do. You don't want that. Let's shake hands and part ways before it becomes toxic.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you can see both sides of it. You can see the club side not wanting to blow up their wage structure, and you can see Salah's side of it where he's like, Ronaldo's on United at 37 years old, making double what I'm making. So you can arguably see both sides. I think supporters are just kind of tired of the debate in general, like taking over the headlines. I think we're all more concerned with winning the next 3 trophies this season. So Yeah, I think that's taking the headlines a bit too far. But I think in terms of like rather be done with it, it's more be done with the news and the headlines. Like, but what about you? Do you think it's leaning one way towards the other? Are you getting a sense of that?
I think right now we should be excited, shouldn't we? We're potentially making football history. We're doing so. You know, we're in the run for something that's never been done before, and we have two big worries sitting in our minds. We have the Klopp promise of I'm not going to extend, I need a break, and we've got the Salah contract, and it feels like it's taking away some of the excitement from what should be the most amped we've been. When we've got agents tweeting things to annoy us and stuff like that. So I think I'm kind of the opinion where I just want a resolution so that we can focus. I mean, look at Louis. You don't look happy, do you, Louis?
Oh, sorry. How's everybody doing?
We're good. We're good.
Lovely. What's the general consensus so far? I can see Bojak's having a tantrum.
Yeah, I think it feels like we're getting to a breaking point. It feels like the club have said what they want. He wants, and you know, rightly so. He might want what Kevin De Bruyne wants. We want to pay what fits within our structure. It feels like there's becoming a breaking point where I think people feel like a decision needs to be made and the communication needs to be made, because we would rather celebrate him for the remainder of the season and push him forward and thank him for what he's done than have this snidey tweeting agent making out that everything's, and that Genie sort of decline, because Genie could have been celebrated on his exit. But some comments he made about, well, I would have stayed, I would have done, I think just marred it all. And it feels like it's getting to that precipice point, really. What about you, Lewis? How are you feeling about it?
Well, I can see a couple of people saying that this debate has been done to death, and I understand that. But at the same time, I think there's, between each one we've done about this, I think there have been new developments, and I think over the course of since this whole saga started, some opinions may have slightly shifted. I think for the longest time, up until January, February time, everyone was just kind of just give him what he wants. He's the best player in the world. We've got to pay him. Because at the time we were kind of riding on an FSG out wave and like, you know, they're the worst part of this club, etc., etc. Now, and I must admit, I'm kind of one of these people. I know it sounds silly and it sounds like it's a result of just signing Luis Diaz, but I have changed my opinion slightly on FSG. And so for me, I can more clearly and more rationally see both sides of the argument. So I agree with Hot Stuff in a way. I think we shouldn't make judgments about either side until we actually know what's going to happen, because this isn't the first time that we've seen a player or an agent speaking out and demanding something. And, you know, it happened with Pogba for ages, and we know he's got a much worse agent, and he ended up signing a new deal. It's happened with loads of players before, and sometimes they will move on, but sometimes it is literally just the tactics to get those extra £10,000-15,000 extras a week. So with Hot Stuff and Bojack earlier, I kind of agree, but at the same time, it is worth talking about, and it is worth getting people's opinions on that.
So I'm going to do a hypothetical. Where could he go? There's only PSG. Is there literally anyone else where he could go? Because Chelsea, well, and this probably fits into the FSG debate as well. Chelsea are going to be financial fair played, aren't they? So they're probably coming down to Liverpool's level and below Liverpool's level. Chelsea will probably turn to be a Tottenham, probably be replaced by Newcastle with the infinite money glitch that they've got. So yes, he could go to Newcastle. PSG, they're owned by a country. Man City owned by a country. That's it, really. Real Madrid, Barcelona are not financially in that game yet. So he's got a question. Does he want to play it out at PSG, win Ligue 1? What would he do? Get knocked out in the quarterfinals of the Champions League? Or does he want to try and win something, cement a legacy, and build something that he could knock off some incredible Liverpool players?
Yeah. Do we still feel like Real Madrid and Barcelona are out of those conversations? I guess Real Madrid are linked heavily with Mbappe, and I guess Barcelona maybe, I wouldn't say don't need a Salah right now, but maybe the forward positions aren't their priority because they did sign a few in January. But on those two clubs, do we still believe that they're like financially in ruin at the moment, or?
But well, it's because of the financial rules that have been implemented by the league in Spain. So Real Madrid, because their commercial revenue is so high, they probably could. But given they want Mbappe, given they want Haaland, they're probably going to be putting someone like Tuchmene, they've been linked with, on hold for a year whilst they sort out the finances. And Salah doesn't have years to be put on hold.
Mm.
You know, he's 30, he's a now or never signing, isn't he? Barcelona, Spotify, they were hit worse with some of this because they're still paying ridiculous wages for Dembele, Coutinho, and a few others. So they will take another year to reset, even with the Spotify new camp. Before that, they get all the people in the stadium and that resets their revenue. This is just from reading about all the financial. I guess the only other one really in the mix, and the one that could afford it, is Bayern Munich. They could afford it. And he would have a cracking year at Germany because everybody would. But, you know, they're trying to cement the Lewandowski legacy and Ballon d'Or, rightly so. He deserves one. As much as Salah deserves one, Lewandowski deserves one. So you wouldn't really want to mix that up too much.
Could the Spanish clubs come into play if they like try to offload it with giving us, you know, like a Dembele for Barca or a, you know, Asensio for Real Madrid? Like just try to pile on players, be like, we'll give you 20 mil and then like.
So what would you take, Drew? What would you take?
I'd rather go to Madrid's player pool than Barca's at the moment, but like I'd almost want to continue our mini conversation we had during your live stream, Louis, because for me the biggest disappointment is like how much is enough. Like you look at players like Neymar who are, you know, allegedly showing up to practice drunk, you know, Pogba talking about depression, and it's like clearly money doesn't look like it buys happiness or proves your, you know, how good you are. And I understand like the highest paid players should be, or the best players should be the highest paid, but at what point, you know, do you want 18 rooms in your house as opposed to 12? And I'm not saying that from a petty point of view. I'm saying what's Mo Salah's long-term goal? I'm sure if he gets solid financial advice, then he can build a fortune and amass it with what he has. Like, what's he really going for? I'm sad to see it come down to money. Like,
well,
yeah.
Let me flip it for you both. You've won Euro Millions or Powerball, I think it is in America. You've won 200 million. They ring you up and they go, do you want to just take 150? You don't really need 200. You'd be like, well, no, I've won 200 million. Pay me 200 million. Now, in that, you've been lucky and you've won something. You haven't dedicated your entire life, made multiple sacrifices, made multiple decisions to get you to that moment. We say,
it depends where the 50's going, though. If the 50 is going to like charity or to other players in this scenario, for Liverpool, I'd be like,
yeah. The person that came second in the draw, you know, they were a number off. They deserve it.
Mm-hmm. If he's one of my buddies, like if he's coming to my neighborhood to hang out,
but they could spend it all on a Pogba who's useless.
Mm.
You get my point. It's you say how much is too much. This is a lifetime of work coming to the culmination of one final contract.
Mm.
And there is not any scenario where we could earn that amount of money where we would turn around and go, yeah, it doesn't matter. If it was to give it to people and we had control of the money, that's a different matter. But you don't have control of the money and it could be spent on idiocy.
Well, this is where agents come into play, I guess. I do find it interesting, and I wish there was a bit more clarity from someone. I'm sure there's a book about it, but like the actual relationship between players and their agents, and how much, like, the way Salah's agent has behaved is very weird, and you wouldn't associate it with Salah, but maybe they have sat down and discussed the strategy to try and weasel out this much money. But I'm sure if players didn't have agents, they probably would settle for less. But at the end of the day, that is the agent's job, and whether that's right or wrong is a separate discussion. But a large part of that must be the agent hyping him up, making him believe that he's worth this much, telling him, like, you're up there, your stats are better than Mbappe this season, like you, and he's earning X, Y, and Z. You should therefore be up earning X, Y, and Z.
Kevin De Bruyne didn't have an agent, did he? He used an analytical firm to work out his financial worth to the team and the revenue that was generated, which I thought was a really clever model. So the work he worked out, or he paid an analytics company to work out his value in the Premier League to the other players in the world that play his position, his value to how Man City play, the performance, what he brings to it, and what he would bring over the next 4 years of the contract using an algorithm built and things like that, and gave that to Man City, and they went, oh, we don't care about this much money. This is nothing to us. Of course we'll sign it. But that's by the by. It was a very clever approach, which didn't have agents in it.
Mm.
And I think sometimes they've
obviously got their own interests as well.
Yeah. They sometimes want a move for a signing on fee because this is Rami's last payday. Who else does he have as a client that is going to earn this amount of money? So a big transfer fee of 200 million, which he gets his mitts on 20, 30 million of, he's not going to get via a contract.
Mm.
So I think the agents, sometimes their value in this is a transfer fee makes me more cash, and I'm only going to get one more chance to get cash off Salah. So difficult to balance his personal objectives with his client's objectives. Now, he will always say he'll put his client's objectives first, but I can tell you, if I was the agent, I'd be thinking about what's best for me.
Yeah. Well, agents come up a lot nowadays in transfers, especially like those super agents. James, do you think that football, FIFA, the FA, should they try and intervene somehow and get a hold of agents, like cap them? I don't know.
Well, there has been a white paper that's been written by FIFA with regards to the regulation of agents and the money that they can earn. So they've set this white paper to try and sort of put a cap on agency fees and what people can charge for certain variables and things like that. Now, the problem you've got with that is FIFA are corrupt as shit. And a lot of them earn money off these sales because people can own in different leagues percentages of players. And, to help us do this, we'll give you a percentage of this player like he's a company and stuff like that. But there's merit to this going through, because if there is a regulation on fees, and I think in a lot of American sports, Drew, you'll probably be able to tell me if I'm wrong on this, there is regulation, salary caps, agency caps, and things like that, because people are not getting the best choices for their career because people are trying to push the money thing. So if this regulation can come through, it would be a lot better. If it doesn't come through, it will, and this is where the Premier League struggles, they won't implement it. Like Spain have implemented this salary cap of 70% of your earnings has to go on wages. If your earnings drop, you've got to release players, you've got to do this. Now, the Premier League hasn't done that because it's the best league in the world, which it actually is. I don't know why I'm doing that.
I think we're looking to do that, though, actually.
Yeah, but we won't do it until everyone else has, because if we don't, we'll be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we can't afford to be done. And that's where agents come in. So they're fighting this with all their money and all their power and everything that they've got, saying our players won't play for this, that, and the other. So as with anything, money is the biggest problem in all of it, because everyone wants it. And only really the players do the work to earn it. Which agents will say they do loads of work, but they're just lawyers.
Gary says this has gone on long enough. Sell him, get a huge price for him. Drew, at what point would you maybe go down that road? Would you be waiting for a final decision, or if it just drags on too much, would you just kind of say, "Oh, sod it, get rid of him"?
I'd give it a summer deadline, maybe like after the season, concludes. Hopefully, a few more trophies. Give Salah a little vacation, and then set a week for crunch talks, and then be like, if we can't hammer this out in this week, we're putting you for sale. And for me, I think $300,000 would. What does he earn? 200,000 right now, right? Somewhere around there.
Something like that. With the bonuses we pay, it's hard to quantify, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd be like, keep the same bonuses to extend that 300,000 raise. It's 50% raise on his contract, and be like, that wouldn't destroy our wage structure, and we can talk about bonuses, etc. But that to me seems reasonably fair. And then, what was that Arsenal player who ended up being like a billionaire from investing in like an oil company, like Flemini or something?
Someone random, yeah.
But like, if it's just about dollars and cents and setting up your future, you're more likely to cement that outside of football than trying to squeeze it out of a 3-year contract, or 5-year, whatever that being. Like James, brilliant points with agents. Great question there, and I think that adds a whole extra dimension to it. But something like, it has to be able to be figured out. If both player and club want the same thing, this should be able to work out. Like, it's like, we both want the same thing. Let's figure it out. But again, I agree. Like, I don't like seeing it dominate the headlines. But funny enough, I think that that brings in all like supporters and the football world, and like I've said before, I think Klopp and the team, every time they see a news article or headline about that, they're just laughing or not even paying attention. So I think it consumes the world at wide rather than the club inside at the moment. But once summer comes, get those week of crunch talks and get it figured out. And if we can't, then we have to get the money for him now rather than let him go on a free.
Well, I think we're all of a shared opinion on terms of what we would like to happen, how we think it sort of goes around. Let's take it into a hypothetical. Let's say we give in to his demands. I think there's guesstimations that he's looking for something in the 350 grand a week range. Let's just say, without bonuses included, we just give him that on a 3-4 year deal, what have you. Is that worth it in terms of the knock-on effect? Because this is something that I've mentioned in previous streams, and some people in the chat were quick to rubbish it, but I'd have genuine concerns about the knock-on effect it would have. Maybe because if you take Diogo Jota as an example, he's currently on about half of what Roberto Firmino is, which is really good in terms of, and this is why I've kind of changed my mind on FSG a little bit, because I think their Moneyball structure does actually work and it does reap benefits and rewards for us. But if Salah's then jumping to 350k, Jota on his next contract, if he continues in the same form, not form that he's in, but the same goal scoring that he's in at the moment and has been for a season and a half now, him and others are surely going to be asking for, again, extortionate amounts of money, and then we're at risk of almost undoing the last 4 or 5 years of hard work. I don't know what either of your thoughts are on that.
There's a complication in this which Chelsea will give us the insight to, and I don't want to be the finance guy, but Chelsea were approximately making 850k to 350 to 800 million loss per year, and they're worth 3.5 billion. I think that's what they're being sold for. Now, FSG, their fundamental belief is they have to sell the club for profit because there are multiple shareholders and owners and Redbird Capital and people involved in the club that want a return on investment from that Liverpool purchase, which is a fair deal and how investment groups work. So if we can start making a few losses, and the value of our club doesn't decline because it's been proven from the Chelsea model, then they may be more willing to take a risk. If the overarching value of Chelsea does decline, because they're not making these big financial sacrifices, then they'll carry on with what they're doing. I think that they don't want to take the risk because they have to keep their investors happy, and I think it could put them in a stickier situation if they started to carry lots of debt, i.e. the Man United model, despite the club being worth X amount of money. And I think we're going to see how it plays out for Chelsea over the next 2 years. I think that'll be the blueprint that FSG will follow. So I can't see them swaying for the next 2 years.
So, just as you are the finance guy, what is the difference between Chelsea and Man United? And I know that sounds like a silly question, but they've both at times spent a lot of money on transfer fees and wages. So what's the difference there?
So what Man United are doing is they're leveraging debt against the club, and the owners are extracting an artificial profit out of that by leveraging the club in a worse position. So they're having to refinance this debt on such a regular basis that eventually Man U will either need to be sold and someone will have to come in with an awful lot of money to put it all right and everything like that, or they'll keep floating elements of the club, like selling shares like they have been in America, and increasing the value of it that way. Chelsea's financing, and whilst they've been making losses, has a lot of it's been done as director loans. And the benefit of a director loan to a bank loan is a director loan says, I will not take interest on this loan. You will pay me back this 100 million when you want to.
Yeah.
A bank will say, you will pay us back this money when we say we will, and you will pay us this interest payment every week. And it will go up and up and up. And if we suddenly decide we want paying back, you're paying us back. Now, in theory, that will never happen because no club could ever pay that back so quickly. But there is a real risk. Let's say they sold Pogba for 200 million. A bank could say, well, we want 100 million. Now, Roman Abramovich could say that, but he would have just what his own interests in the club at heart. A bank has the interest of the bank at heart. So like an RBS, when they went under in a financial crisis, which were on the verge of another one due to COVID and all the money, they could recall all that debt from United and put them in a really bad situation. So that's the difference between bank financing and private financing. That's why Newcastle will be fine, because they're privately financed. And it doesn't matter the same. And as Gary put, because Chelsea kept winning, they kept topping up the coffers quite regularly. Because United aren't winning and they're not making Europe and they're not hitting some of their objectives, the bank are going to recall some of that debt probably soon, which is why is it Green and Gold Army or whatever they're called, are going on about it so much.
I am still here. I'm just going to turn my camera off quickly. Drew, talking about that risk, I'll ask you, would FSG take that risk? But I think we all kind of know the answer unless something dramatic changes. But is that risk even worth taking? Like, is it something that we need to do considering how successful their model has been so far?
I think that this is something you've touched on before. For me, I'm more concerned about the knock-on effect with other players and what that means for the ethos of the club. I think financially, as long as it's working for them, that's where FSG will stand. If they need to make a change, maybe that changes after Klopp leaves, etc. But for me, it's more about the ethos in the club and the knock-on effect. If we start giving Salah silly money, and as you said before, then next time Jota comes to the table, he's going to be like, well, I scored 20 goals this past season in all competitions, plus that. So, if you work out the numbers, I should be learning at least, X amount. And then for me, it then becomes every single player, how worthy is Van Dijk? How much is Trent? Trent's young too. How long can that go? Becomes one of those things that just spools out of control. Like you look at the situation at United, which James just mentioned, with the fact that they're not winning. But for me, that also goes to the ethos. It's like it becomes way more individualistic, where Players are then concerned about their performances over the team performances. If goals means bigger salary, then why would I pass it? When I get to the final third, why wouldn't I just go for the shot if that means that I'm going to get if there's 10 chances where I could pass it for an easier, tap in, but if I make 3 of those chances to boost my numbers from, 12 goals in the Prem to 15, which means, you start breaking it down to that. You guys get the gist. For me, it just ruins the ethos of the club is the most important. It's the team that matters. Like, it doesn't matter who scores as long as we win, as long as we have the chance in every game and are competing for every trophy. Like, that's what I feel everyone loves about Liverpool is you see the camaraderie, you see the, on the pitch and off the pitch. Like, it just looks like a family, and that's what we all buy into. And if it just starts becoming an individualistic club where players are going there to get the highest contracts, I would not want to be supporting that. And that's where I feel like I fall on the whole agreement. While I do believe Salah is the best player in the world and deserves money that reflects that, I don't think it should be breaking the wage structure. I think there should be an agreement within the family of Liverpool that gets him the recognition he deserves, but doesn't blow it out of proportion and turn Liverpool into a Manchester United.
Who do you replace him with, Louis? I'm going to ask you a question. So let's say Salah went. Who's out there? Who's out there that could get 25 Premier League goals a season every year?
Right. So I don't have a direct answer as many times. I don't have a direct answer for you, but something that I was going to ask you about, because a lot of people in the chat, and I was talking about before, swings and roundabouts on people's opinions on this. Some people are saying, sod it, let's just cash in if we even could. Let's just get rid of him if he wants to be like that because no one's bigger than the club, etc., etc. That's where my whole thoughts on FSG and Moneyball has changed, because although they've not all been as successful as Salah, our attacking options have all arrived, been scouted and been bought as a result of Moneyball. Moneyball, for those who know or may not know, it's often confused with purely about buying cheap and selling high. Contrary to popular belief on social media, that's not all that it is. It's about finding undervalued players who fit into a certain sweet spot. For the attackers, fitting into a certain sweet spot in terms of expected goals, touches in the penalty box per 90, certain things like this, which we've become renowned for, having a really good scouting network, a really good director of football in Michael Edwards, and soon after Julian Ward next season. So I think we would be fine, and I think some people are starting to get that confidence, and I think that's maybe why some people are starting to edge towards, well, let's just get rid of him, because we've brought in Mane's, we've brought in Jota's, we've brought in now Luis Diaz, who maybe he could be that guy in a year or two. Maybe, we've seen how good he looks on the ball. His hold-up play sensational. I think all he's missing for us now is just a little bit more end product, but I'm sure that's going to come very soon. Maybe he'll be that guy. So in terms of my confidence in Liverpool to go and find someone to replace Salah, if that's what was needed, my confidence in our system is at an all-time high. I genuinely believe we could find someone. If not, we've already got that person here or lined up very shortly. So no, I don't have an exact person, but I am very confident that Liverpool would be able to not just find someone who could fill 10 of those goals, but find someone who could get very close to being up there on Salah's levels.
It's interesting though, because it's always a risk, isn't it? As much as
it's always a risk, yeah, always.
They've made so many
giving him a new contract is a risk as well, because I'm not comparing them, but we saw it with Aubameyang. He flatlined after getting his new contract. He is also in his 30s now. There's no guarantees he'll still be scoring 25 goals a season. So every decision in football is a risk. There's no guarantees, but with our track record of signings under this ownership, under this director of football, more often than not, we have been successful with it, and that's where my confidence comes from.
He was confident, Drew?
Yeah, spot on. I think Louis hit the nail on the head. Liverpool have shown that they can bring in quality players that make the next step. And I'd argue that we already have the guys in the ranks to fill in for Salah. I mean, Jota handled Mane and Salah's absence before Luis Diaz really got embedded into the team too. So I think we have the quality in the team already, and Liverpool would most likely bring in somebody who would step up to the plate, just like they have in the past. So I'm not as worried. We'd be losing one of the best players in the world, but we have more than enough talent vying to take that over. And I'd be curious to see the knock-on effect. It becomes one of those things where when we lost Coutinho or Suarez was different with Rodgers, but
I'm still gutted about losing Suarez.
Me too. But Coutinho, like when we lost him, he was our best player. As much as people rag on him or want or like get rid, like he was insane. And there was a reason that Barcelona paid that much for him. But we moved on without him and had more than enough step up. And when we first brought in Salah, he was supposed to be backup for Mane. Like Mane had that breakout first season, and we were just kind of like, oh yeah, and he was on the right. Mane was on the right. And it was like, oh, we need some backup because what if Mane gets injured? And then all of a sudden, it's Salah and Mane and Bobby. And that's how it works. So, yeah, like Louis said, with the recruiting, FSG has shown more than enough. Like what they've built since when we had Gillette and Hicks has been amazing. So,
for me, I think... Yes, I think we could replace him, but I think the most natural replacement, and as much as there's been crazy numbers talked about with Haaland, to me, he would be the most natural replacement because he's a freakish footballer. Salah's a freakish footballer. Haaland is, the pace that he's got for his size makes no sense. And his family are Liverpool fans, so there seems to be a good connection there. So I genuinely think if it's going to happen, it all needs to happen this summer. So Salah would need to go in the summer. We would need to find a replacement if it was going to be of someone of that standing this summer. And I think everything would need to come into line. But that's if Haaland's got a dodgy agent, hasn't he? And if
is Haaland just a personal choice for you, or like, do you think we would actually maybe look into it?
I think the way I'm going to give a really old example. So, like when United were really good, we're talking ages ago. You might not even remember this, Louis. Drew, you might. They had two strikers up front. One was Dwight York. One was Andy Cole. And they had Beckham and some Sky Sports pundit right back, Giggs and Dennis Irwin, and they just crossed the ball into the middle. And these two were great in the air. And that was how they dominated. No one could really deal with it. And Jota's great in the air. He's great in the air, but he's got the best delivery in the world. Imagine someone with an aerial advantage, a pace advantage and an aerial advantage. So it still plays on my head. How many assists could Robertson and Trent get if we had someone with an advantage? You look at things like the NBA, and there's some great dunkers in the world, but a 7-foot centre is still a 7-foot centre, and they can still get to the rim better than that 6'6", point guard. So there's just something I want to see, which is a massive centre forward who's got good pace attacking that cross, because I think it would be undefendable. It's undefendable a word? It is a word. I'm going with it. So that's why for me that makes sense, because it would be something that you couldn't plan against.
Well, this is something I feel like I almost ask everyone every stream, and we've almost already covered it in this one. But is that someone that we ever go for? Because Haaland's next contract would be a gigantic one with his agent. There's crazy talk about Not just a signing bonus for Haaland, but like 35 million for his agent, 20 million for his dad, like ridiculous stuff. Again, do Liverpool need to make those kind of risks, or can we stick to finding almost uncut gems?
I think a lot of noise around Haaland, and I think we spoke. Were you on the stream with me last night, Louis? I forget who was on with me last night, but last night we talked about the players Liverpool go for are players who make the choice. I'm going to sign for Liverpool regardless of what happens. Diaz made the choice. Konate made the choice. I think if Haaland made the choice, it would happen. And all the noise and chaos and everything would disappear and it'd be dealt with in the background. If he doesn't make the choice and he's making all the noise continues, it'll never happen. He would at some point need to say, that's where I want to go. And that's why players like Jude Bellingham, people think is going to happen, because it sounds like he wants to make it happen. There's very little noise about it or anything like that. There's not crazy wage demand. Every so often the story comes up and it disappears as soon as it pops up. So I think it would need to be a very decisive decision from Haaland to say, I want to move here. And if he did make that decision, he's not going to turn it. They're not going to turn around and go, no, you're all right.
What about you, Drew? You know, could you ever see that happening? Because for me, I just don't see any of those major signings happening. Haaland, Mbappe, Bellingham, they're sort of the big three that we get links to, although Mbappe is like definitely not happening. But those kind of mega signings, I just don't think we ever do.
Yeah, I don't see it in the context of like if we got rid of Salah and then signed Haaland and put him on 350 grand a week. I think that would piss a lot of players off at the club. So I think from that context that we wouldn't sign him. If all those rumors about what he's demanding, I think it was like 600 grand at one point, you know. As for the signing on fees for the agent and his dad and stuff like that, I almost think that could be in lieu of a transfer fee. If we sat here at the end of the day and we're like, yeah, we paid 100 million over, you know, to Haaland, to his dad, and Mino Raiola, but we got Haaland and he wanted to be at the club and he was willing to earn 200 grand a week. Like, I think everyone would be like, okay. And I remember reading, again, you don't know what's true with all the rumors getting flown out, but I remember one saying that money wasn't his like ultimate goal. Haaland saying that he's like, I would take less money to be at a club that I was invested in the project. So from that context, I really like him. So that might be me personally just trying to lean towards that being a potential reality. And that would be, I think, as James said, the only realistic replacement for Salah, you know, an Mbappe or a Haaland. But I think it's only realistic, as James said, if he wants to go to the club and he's willing to make it happen. That's the only way I see it happening. But I'm not too fussed if we don't get him. Actually, I think what the club's building is you know, they've shown it. Like, the evidence is there. You know, I was so surprised that pundits, you know, didn't even give us a look in saying that we'd questionably get top 4 this year. It was, you know, it's City and us in the Premier League, and that reflects in Europe as well. It's probably going to be us or City getting to the final unless Chelsea has a say or, you know, Bayern Munich turns us over. But I don't see that happening. And you know, anyone who wants to be a part of that moving forward, I think that's the most important thing.
I think it's interesting. A lot of the times in the Premier League, if you think about it, there's areas where really top quality players disappear for a period of time. So when Van Dijk was available, there was a big lack in centre backs. Like there was very, very few centre backs around, and he was cream of the crop, wasn't he? And now there's the new generation coming through. You know, you're talking Konates. There's a couple, you know, Ben White looks like a good centre-back at Arsenal. Gabriel's looking, you know, there's some good-looking centre-backs coming through. Goal scorers, however, they look to be short commodity at the moment, don't they? There's not a big raft of natural goal scorers around the world at this moment in time. I think probably if you think about the young up and comers, you're thinking Adeyemi, you're thinking Haaland, Mbappe, but he's more a winger. But actual natural goal scorers,
Yeah.
I think that's where the rare commodity is at this moment in time. So I think Liverpool may spend big on it if they make big on someone like Salah and they sold him, but they're not going to spend big if they don't have to. It's going to be a quid pro quo. The only way we'd ever get Haaland is if we made a boatload of money from selling Salah. And it may be Amy as opposed to Haaland because it'd make more sense.
I think an interesting is our situation, like where we're at right now. I don't feel like the club is desperate. And I think, alluded to it earlier, Louis, when you said once Diaz came in, like that kind of balance where it's like, we're actually good and we're not going to be buying from a place of lack. Whereas when we needed Van Dijk, it was pretty much like, all right, we'll pay 70 mil and everybody was up in arms at that price, but we needed that center back, and then we needed Alisson. Like it was one of the, all right, we need a goalkeeper, but this time it's like we have wiggle room, especially if we come out of this season with 3-4 trophies. Like yes, we'll want to go again next season, but we'll have that momentum, and we're going to be in the driving seat from that point. It's not a situation where if we lose Salah, it's like a Suarez scenario where our whole team looks pathetic if we lose one player.
No, I don't think it would look pathetic. I'd agree with you there, Drew. But I think it has, without a significant replacement, it has a significant detrimental mental impact.
Like, as a microcosm, the Real Madrid Champions League final when he went off,
It will have a... People will, the players themselves will believe they're less than the sum of their parts than they were. Now, granted, that could be a quadruple winning team. So unless someone significantly mentally strong or personality-wise comes in, something would need to happen.
Do you think that's an external factor, though, more than an internal with the club? Because I'm thinking, like, you've got some confident players in the club. Whenever I see like a video like inside the club with Diogo Jota for one, like I almost hear Ronaldo when I hear him speak because of the Portuguese accent. But every single player backs themselves, and I'm thinking that spot opening up leaves potential room for Jota or Diaz to be like, you know what, Salah's lost. I'm gonna be the man for the team, and I'm wondering if that's just opening the door for someone stepping up.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think about significant players, and Salah's a significant player, and I'm trying to think about sports where a significant player's left, and has that team carried on the same level? I'm thinking Arsenal, Patrick Vieira. Did they carry on? No, they might have replaced. Altogether, they were a great team, weren't they? Or was it Martin Keown that left first, or Tony Adams, someone like that?
Ronaldinho and Messi.
Ronaldinho when he left Barcelona, Eto'o.
Messi stepped up.
Ibrahimovic, Martin Johnson when he stopped playing for England rugby. Without someone significant coming in, I think it creates a problem. So, like when Eto'o left Barcelona, Ibrahimovic came in, or it might have been the vice versa. There needs to be something that just G's you up. Because I think look at Diaz. Diaz has G'd up this team. There's just someone that's coming with energy, enthusiasm. I am going to make something happen here. And it's taken us up 2 gears. I think we could cope without Salah, but I think there would need to be someone coming in that just G's us up a couple of gears again to go, all right, but we're going again.
In that scenario, though, when Ronaldinho got moved on from Barca, Messi was the one to step up, and he was the youngster coming through. Like I think he just had 1 or 2 seasons in the side.
Cade Gordon, 2022.
I don't know about Cade, but if like we saw the first 3 games with Harvey Elliott, and everyone was just like, "Oh my God, this 17-year-old kid is running it." And I'm not saying it's an immediate like for like, but I'm wondering if it's just similar to Coutinho, where we think that this player could completely throw off the balance of the team, and then just everyone just ups their game in his absence.
Potentially, and we're using Messi as an example, and Messi changed the entire Barcelona academy when he was 9 years old because of the way that he played football. It's not really the same with Harvey Elliott. I think Harvey Elliott is going to be an exceptional player and could be something very special. It's not like that when Gerrard's coming through. He's good, but it's, even Gerrard didn't have that impact straight away. He had to mature in. It's just, I'm trying to think, Harvey Elliott, I think, is going to be very, very special. I think Harvey Elliott would be one of those players that wouldn't be affected if Salah left. I think it would make Harvey Elliott better, but I think others would decline.
I guess this question for both of you: if we lose Salah this summer and don't bring anyone in, and Man City doesn't bring anyone in, it's essentially the same this season to next season, except we lose Salah. Are we all of a sudden 10 points behind City, or is it still something that we'd be able to be fighting on all fronts?
Ooh, what if we just lost Salah and the squad stayed as it is,
and everyone else stayed in this moment?
James, I'll let
you lose 25 goals, don't you, straight off the bat? And
but does that get shared?
You might be able to replace 10 of them with one player on the right wing, because I don't think any player playing on the right wing will score 25 goals. So let's just say that they score 10, because that's good for. Let's say they score 15 actually, because that's good for a winger. For a full season, isn't it? You're still 10 behind. Now, 10 goal difference puts us 5 behind Man City goal difference this year.
And then, it depends where you take those goals away in terms of...
Yeah, it depends when. But I think with our other main players getting another year older, your Manes, your Firminos, your Hendersons, your Milners, I think Van Dijk will be fine till his mid-30s, because he only has to run about 3 times a game. Everything else he does in his head.
I presume with Diaz, we're probably saying it's too early to even guess if he could fill a void. And with Jota, although he's got that goal-scoring instinct, his overall performances probably are lacking at the moment. That would be fair to say.
Yeah, I don't think we would. I think we'd be behind. Now, I think if we win the Premier League and if we got the quadruple, we'd be way behind next year regardless. Because I always think the year after, everyone always drops. Very rare do teams go back to back. Especially if you were to do all of them. I think it would be a hangover. If we weren't getting with. It'd be fine. I'd be all right. I'd still be celebrating it all next year anyway.
Just draw a line under the next season. I don't care.
It can just be a parade. But yeah, I think we'd be behind.
I don't think that's controversial to say. I agree with what you've both said. Just personally, I think we'd go about it the way that I won't say Coutinho because we splashed out £150 million on players, but the way that we have done since then, which would just be to keep quite calm and composed, whether that's right or wrong. And I think we would go for someone again in the ilk of what we've been signing, which is undervalued players who have that potential to step up and fit into our wage structure. Because as Drew points out, there's no point for whatever reason giving away or selling Salah because he wanted 350,000 and then getting a Haaland and having to give him even 300,000 on wages. I think that's just a little, I don't know, just doesn't feel right to me.
Just want to see a proper aerial threat getting on the end of these crosses, though.
Spring Peter
because I've looked at his stats and he's a terrible player. He just scores goals, which I know it's a great knack to have, but he can't pass the ball. He's like Lukaku, but worse.
Who's that?
Build-up play. Velhalovic, is it?
Oh, right. Yep.
honestly, he makes Lukaku look like he's Ronaldinho when you look at his passing and receiving stats. Yes, he scores, but that's about it. But I just want to see a decent centre forward have an attack at a Trent and Robertson cross for a season. Ooh, Matthias has nailed it.
Isaac.
Oh, what a player he is.
I don't know how, I don't feel like there's been too much heat around that.
I am a big fan of him. I remember watching quite a lot of him. I think it was Euros. He's very much like Firmino for me in how he plays, but he's taller, he's rangier, he's good in the air, he scores a good few goals.
All right, so this is from the LFC Transfer Room website, actually. Liverpool scouts advise recruitment team to swoop for Real Sociedad frontman Alexander Isaac.
Oh yeah,
I reckon he's got a 75 million euro release clause, so I can't remember how much that works out to. But there's reports that they could let him go for a little bit less.
He's 6'3",
22 years old,
I think, as well.
Yeah, he does look massive. 32 appearances in all competitions, scoring 8 goals and assisting 3. That doesn't sound too impressive, but I guess Jota probably didn't have better stats than that when he was at Wolves.
22.
4 years left on his current deal. So that would be a fairly significant chunk of any transfer budget that we had, I guess. But if it'll make your dreams come true,
6'3", and he's playing for Real Sociedad. You imagine how many more opportunities he get with Trent and Robert crossing the ball in. Now, granted, he's a beanpole, so he might not be great in the air. Don't actually know.
Well, that's the thing. And then what's the trade-off in terms of how we've played for the last 3-4 years?
He's very good.
We haven't had a number 9.
No, I think he is a 9.5, to be honest. When I've watched him play, I think he plays more in that Firmino type role. I'm sure Matty has said agree, just from what I've seen of him. But he'd need a bit of conversion. I don't know what his pressing's like. I've never seen him have to do pressing or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you just don't know.
João Felix. He's not a beanpole, but he's probably more adept at that now. Well, I don't know about Isaac. I honestly can't pretend to know too much about him. But João Felix, he's well drilled under Simeone.
Isn't he 102 million they signed him for or something ridiculous?
Yeah, that would be a bit of a tricky one, actually. Let me have a look.
So they'd want some cash back for him, wouldn't they? And Cuckoo's a classic. You always see that name come up.
No, I like him a lot.
You know that just to do a promo that Jack's just done an interview about. He's 6'2". He's a left winger. Has played also as a centre forward and an attacking midfielder that we've been linked with. So he may actually be that solution that we're looking for. Sweaty Teen says maybe Son. I think Son's 31 now, isn't he? So I think he falls out of the category.
Don't like him either. Do you see his theatrics against West Ham on the weekend? He Zuma, I mean, not the best person in the world, passed the ball to him, hit his ankle, and he collapsed basically. Caused the whole ruckus. Not the kind of person that we need in the. I know Jota and Robertson can be shithouses, but I don't think any of our players do that kind of thing. João Felix has been linked with a £63 million move to Liverpool. And I forgot about this. He was at Wembley for the Carabao Cup final.
He was, wasn't he?
I wonder if there's anything in that.
Well, there could be a Salah replacement, couldn't there? Because he can play across the front three. He's been playing as a 2 striker for Atletico, hasn't he?
So what about Suarez back for a year whilst we?
I was just about to
figure out what to do.
Well, he rejected Villa, didn't he? Suarez was meant to have rejected Villa.
Bloody hell! Would you take him if I offered him to you? Would you take him for a year?
A 1-year stopgap?
James says no.
James, he would get 15 at least.
Of course he would. But he's not even starting for Atletico Madrid.
Simeone's got that weird power struggle thing though with players. Like when Torres came back, like it was that weird, like know your place kind of dynamic that he sent out to Torres.
He's what now, Suarez? 33?
35. I don't think he would get 10. I don't think he'd get 10, you know.
We're top 2 or 3 club in the world. It's not what we should be doing.
No.
I'm not suggesting that we should. That's what we should look to do. Jared Bowen, I haven't. You know, he's Chris's boy at the moment.
Yeah, Kris hasn't been on the stream in a while. That's why we've not heard that name.
Well, we could sit here naming players all night, but I think we've come and done what we needed to do, which was just talk about, you know, the most recent news regarding Salah's contract. So I think we will wrap it up there. We'll be sensible. There's always another day if we want to talk about something else. Reminder, if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe and like this video. Please, really helps us out. Also, you may have noticed at the bottom, we are partnered up with Manscaped at the moment. So if you're looking for ball trimmers, nose trimmers, free pair of boxers in there, kits, all that good stuff, go to the link in the video description below. Use the code TR2020 at the checkout to get 20% off and free shipping. Please do have a look at that. It not only gets you the essentials that you need for down there and up there, it also helps out our channel as well for anybody who uses that code. So we'll be back again tomorrow for another stream. We're trying to keep as daily as possible, especially during this international break, just to make up for the gap of no Liverpool games. So James, Drew, everybody in the live chat and everybody who's been watching, thank you very much for being on this stream talking about Mo Salah's contract. We'll see you all in the next stream. Take care and have a lovely Wednesday evening. Sorry.
You have a lovely Wednesday evening, Louis.
Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you so much. No one ever says that. Yeah. Take care, everybody.